My name is John. I am 32 years old, and I still remember the exact moment my father told me I was dead to him. My own brother Michael had convinced him that I stole $39,000 from our family business. I lost everything that day. My family, my job, my home, my reputation. 5 years later, they showed up at my door, desperate and broke. The business was failing, and they needed me. What they never expected was the plan I had been crafting all along. Let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I turned the tables on those who betrayed me. Growing up in Portland, our family was built around Roberts Construction, the company my father started with just a pickup truck and a toolbox. Robert Thompson was a respected builder in the community, known for quality work and fair prices. After my mother Sarah died from cancer when I was 15 and Michael was 11, the business became even more central to our lives. It was all Dad had left of the dream they shared together. I stepped up immediately, helping with Michael and learning the business after school and on weekends. By 18, I was handling invoices and basic accounting while attending community college for business management. Michael, meanwhile, enjoyed a more carefree childhood. Dad seemed to pour all his remaining capacity for tenderness into Michael, perhaps feeling the youngest needed more protection after losing Mom. John handles everything so well, Dad would say, not realizing that I was drowning too, just hiding it better. Michael needs more understanding right now. This pattern continued into our 20s. I finished my degree and joined the company full-time, gradually taking over financial management, client relationships, and project planning. I worked 60-hour weeks, determined to make Roberts Construction the company my parents had dreamed of. Michael joined after dropping out of college, but Dad created a marketing position for him that required little actual responsibility. The differences in our personalities became more pronounced with time. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a practical sedan, and saved aggressively for the future. Michael bought a downtown loft, leased a new sports car every 2 years, and spent weekends at exclusive clubs. Dad excused these extravagances as Michael finding himself. He will settle down eventually, Dad would assure me when I expressed concern about the company paying for Michael's lifestyle through an inflated salary. He just processes grief differently. By 30, I was essentially running the company day to day. Dad remained the face of the business, but increasingly relied on my judgment for major decisions. We had expanded from residential construction to commercial projects, tripling our annual revenue and growing to 40 employees. I felt proud of what we had built together, even if recognition was rarely forthcoming. The one bright spot in my personal life was Rachel Chen, an architect I met through a commercial project. Smart, driven, and kind. She understood my dedication to the family business without making me feel guilty for the long hours. After 3 years together, we were discussing marriage and starting our own family. "You carry so much on your shoulders," Rachel would say, massaging the tension from my neck after particularly grueling days. "Your dad and brother are lucky to have you." Even if they never say it, I believed the sacrifice was worth it. Roberts Construction was my heritage, my future, and my contribution to my father's legacy. Despite the unequal treatment, I never truly resented Michael. He was my little brother, and I had promised my mother I would always look out for him. I assumed that one day, when Dad retired, Michael would mature, and we would lead the company together as equals. There were warning signs, in retrospect. The casual comments from suppliers about Michael entertaining clients at expensive restaurants, far more often than necessary. The occasional cash flow issues that never quite added up. The growing tension between Michael and me whenever I questioned expenditures or asked for documentation. Michael's sudden friendship with Samuel Dixon, a local developer with a questionable reputation who started appearing at company events. "You need to lighten up, John," Michael would laugh when I raised concerns. "Not everything needs to be tracked on a spreadsheet. Relationships are how we get the big contracts." Dad always sided with Michael in these disputes, viewing my caution as rigidity rather than responsibility. When I suggested implementing more formal accounting procedures, Dad accused me of not trusting family. "This is not some corporate machine," he said. "We are building something to pass down through generations. Paperwork and policies will never be as important as blood." Looking back, I see how those words would become painfully ironic. The very lack of proper systems and oversight I had warned about would create the perfect environment for what came next. And blood, as it turned out, would not be thicker than money after all. In the spring, before everything fell apart, we landed the Riverside Plaza contract, a $12 million commercial development that would be our largest project ever. I spent weeks preparing the bid, analyzing costs, and securing the financing needed for initial materials and labor. The company seemed poised for unprecedented success. Michael was put in charge of subcontractor relations, while I handled the financial structuring and main client communications. "This is it, boys," Dad said at the contract signing celebration. "This project will put Robert's construction on the map. Your mother would be so proud of what we have created together." I remember feeling a rare moment of complete contentment that night. The company was thriving. Rachel had just moved in with me. And even Michael seemed focused and engaged with his responsibilities. For once, everything in my life seemed to be coming together perfectly. I had no idea that within 3 months, I would lose it all. The first sign something was wrong came when Michael showed up at a client meeting wearing a watch I knew cost at least $15,000. For someone making $70,000 a year with significant expenses, such a purchase made no financial sense. When I casually asked about it over lunch, he waved off my question. "Just a good replica," he said with a wink. "Looks real though, right? Great for impressing clients." I might have believed him, if not for the new Audi he drove to the office the following week, replacing the BMW he had leased just 8 months earlier. "Got a killer deal," was his only explanation. The dealership wanted to move inventory. My suspicions grew when Jessica from accounting mentioned that Michael had requested her to process several vendor payments without the usual documentation, claiming they were urgent and that he would provide receipts later. "He said you knew about it," Jessica told me, looking uncomfortable. "But I wanted to check, since it is not our normal procedure." I told her to hold the payments and decided it was time to take a closer look at our books. Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed late after everyone left, meticulously going through transaction records, bank statements, and project budgets. What I found sent a chill down my spine. Small amounts, typically between $2,000 and $5,000, had been regularly diverted from various project budgets over the past 6 months. The transactions were cleverly disguised as payments to legitimate subcontractors we frequently used, but when I cross-referenced with actual invoices, the discrepancies became clear. In total, approximately $39,000 had disappeared. The sophisticated nature of the scheme indicated someone with intimate knowledge of our accounting system and approval processes. Only 3 people had that level of access: myself, my father, and Michael. Given the sudden improvement in Michael's lifestyle, the conclusion was obvious but painful. I created a spreadsheet documenting each suspicious transaction, complete with dates, amounts, and the real versus fabricated purposes. Rather than immediately confronting Michael or telling our father, I decided to gather more concrete evidence first. If Michael was in financial trouble, perhaps we could address it privately without destroying his relationship with Dad or his role in the company. What I did not know was that Michael had seen me reviewing the financial records. One night, after I left the office, he returned and discovered the spreadsheet I had foolishly left on my computer. Panicking at the realization that his scheme had been uncovered, Michael made a desperate decision that would change all our lives. Over the next week, while I continued my investigation, Michael executed his counterplan. First, he created a fake email trail suggesting I had been communicating with an offshore account. Then he doctored several bank statements to make it appear that I had been the one diverting funds. He even went so far as to plant cash in my desk drawer and forge my signature on fabricated receipts. Most damning of all, Michael befriended a tech-savvy acquaintance who helped him create a sophisticated digital paper trail leading to a hidden account in my name. He carefully selected evidence that would paint me as not just a thief, but a calculating embezzler who had betrayed family trust. Meanwhile, I had scheduled a meeting with our company lawyer, Bradford Williams, to discreetly discuss how to handle the situation with Michael. I wanted legal advice on the best approach that would protect the company while giving my brother a chance to make amends. "We need to meet tomorrow," I texted Bradford. "Sensitive financial matter requiring discretion." Unfortunately, Bradford mentioned this upcoming meeting to my father, who casually brought it up with Michael, wondering if it had to do with the Riverside project. Realizing his time was running out, Michael decided to strike first. The evening before my scheduled meeting with Bradford, Michael went to our father's house. With tears in his eyes, he told Dad he had discovered something terrible and had been struggling with how to reveal it. He claimed he had noticed financial irregularities and, upon investigating, had found evidence that I had been systematically stealing from the company. "I did not want to believe it," Michael told our father, producing the fabricated evidence. "But the proof is undeniable. John has betrayed us." My father, stunned and heartbroken, spent hours reviewing the doctored documents. The evidence seemed overwhelming, especially with the fake bank account in my name, showing deposits matching the missing amounts. Still, he found it almost impossible to believe that I, who had devoted my entire adult life to the company, would steal from it. "There must be some explanation," Dad said, though his voice betrayed his growing conviction of my guilt. "We need to talk to John before jumping to conclusions." "I know this is painful," Michael responded, adding the final touch to his performance. "But we need to protect the company. If word gets out about financial impropriety, we could lose the Riverside contract. Everything you have built could collapse." By morning, my father had moved from disbelief to anger. The son he had always counted on, the responsible one who held everything together, had apparently been stealing right under his nose. The betrayal felt personal, a repudiation of every value he had tried to instill in us. When I arrived at the office the next day, planning to finally address the issue of Michael's theft, I had no idea I was walking into an ambush that would destroy the life I had built. I knew something was wrong the moment I walked into the office. The receptionist avoided eye contact, and the normal morning chatter fell silent as I passed the break room. When I reached my office, Dad and Michael were already waiting, along with Bradford Williams, our company lawyer. "Sit down, John," Dad said, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. The formal use of my name, instead of his usual, Johnny sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "What is going on?" I asked, remaining standing. "I actually needed to talk to all of you about something important." "I think we know what you wanted to discuss," Michael said, his expression a perfect mask of disappointment and betrayal. "The question is whether you were going to confess or create more lies." Bradford opened a folder and spread various documents across my desk. Bank statements, transaction records, emails, and receipts, all seemingly pointing to my systematic theft of company funds. "We have evidence that you have been embezzling from Robert's Construction," Bradford stated formally. "Approximately $39,000 over the past 6 months. The accusation was so unexpected, so completely opposite to the truth, that I actually laughed. This is absurd. I have been investigating missing funds, yes. But I am not the one who took them." I reached for my computer to show them my own spreadsheet documenting Michael's theft, but found my access had been revoked. "Someone has changed my password. I have proof that Michael has been diverting money to personal accounts." "Unbelievable," Michael whispered, shaking his head. "Even now, he tries to blame me." Dad slammed his fist on the desk, something I had never seen him do in all my years working with him. "Enough. The evidence is clear, John. We have bank statements, withdrawal records, even receipts with your signature. You have been stealing from us for months while pretending to be the responsible one." "Dad, this is insane. I would never steal from the company. I have put my entire life into building this business with you. Why would I risk everything for $39,000? It does not make sense." "Perhaps you should ask yourself that question," Bradford interjected. "The amounts were small enough to potentially go unnoticed, but they add up to a significant sum. Given your gambling visits to Atlantic City over the past year, one might speculate about mounting debts." My mind reeled. I had gone to Atlantic City exactly once, for a friend's bachelor party weekend. How had this single trip been twisted into a gambling habit? The level of planning that had gone into this setup was staggering. "I do not gamble," I protested. Mark Johnson's bachelor party was the only time I have ever been to Atlantic City. You can call him to verify. We have already spoken with several employees who confirm they have heard you discussing bets and losses. Michael said smoothly. Jessica mentioned you seemed particularly stressed about money recently, asking unusual questions about payment processing. Jessica, the same accounting clerk who had flagged Michael's irregular payment requests. Somehow, he had turned my investigation against me. "This is a complete fabrication," I said, struggling to remain calm. "Dad, you have known me my entire life. Do you honestly believe I would steal from our family business? From you?" For a brief moment, I saw uncertainty flicker in my father's eyes, but Michael quickly produced more documents. "We found this hidden in John's desk," he said, handing Dad a small notebook containing what appeared to be records of the stolen amounts with notes about personal expenses. I had never seen the notebook before in my life. "That is not mine. Someone put that there. Dad, please. You have to believe me." "I want to," my father said, his voice breaking slightly. "God knows I want to. But the evidence, John, if you have a problem, if you have gotten yourself into trouble, just be honest with us. Maybe we can find a way forward." "I am being honest. Michael is setting me up because I discovered he was the one stealing money. He has been living beyond his means for months. The watch, the new car, the expensive dinners with so-called clients." Michael shook his head sadly. "John has always resented that you gave me opportunities in the company, Dad. He thinks I have not earned my place here. Now he is trying to deflect his guilt onto me." "That is not true," I began. But Dad held up his hand to silence me. "I have heard enough," he said, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. "John, I cannot believe you would do this to us, to the company your mother and I built, that you helped grow. The Betrayal Island. Beyond anything I could have imagined. I did not betray anyone," I shouted, finally losing my composure. "I am being framed. Check the security cameras. Look at the actual bank records. Not these doctored statements." "We have checked everything," Bradford said. "The evidence is quite comprehensive." Dad stood up, his decision apparently made. "John Thompson, you are terminated from Roberts Construction. Effective immediately. Bradford will draw up paperwork regarding your shares in the company, which will be purchased at fair market value." "Dad, please," I begged, feeling my entire world collapsing. "I am not finished," he continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "I want you out of the company apartment by the end of the week. As for pressing charges, we will refrain if you sign a confession and agree to repayment terms." "A confession? I am not signing anything because I did not do this." "Then perhaps we should involve the police," Bradford suggested. "Go ahead," I challenged. Desperation, giving way to anger. I have nothing to hide. A proper investigation might actually reveal the truth. My father looked at me with such profound disappointment that it physically hurt. "You are not the son I raised. The John I knew would never steal, and he certainly would not stand there lying to my face when caught. I am the same person I have always been," I said quietly. "The person who stayed when Mom died. The person who has worked alongside you every day for the past 14 years. The person who has never put anything above this family or this company." "Get out," Dad whispered. "Get your personal belongings and get out. Michael will escort you to ensure you take only what belongs to you." As I packed my few personal items into a box, employees watched in shocked silence. People I had worked with for years, some I had personally hired and mentored, now looked at me with suspicion and judgment. Michael stood by the door, ostensibly monitoring me, but actually savoring his victory. When I reached my car, Rachel was waiting in the parking lot, having received my frantic text. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed by my expression. I explained everything as we drove away from Roberts Construction for what I thought would be the last time. Unlike everyone else, Rachel never doubted me for a second. "This is insane," she said. "They cannot seriously believe you would steal. Your whole life is that company." "Apparently, the evidence is quite compelling," I replied bitterly. "Michael has thought of everything." That night, I called my father repeatedly, but he would not answer. I drove to his house, only to find he had already changed the locks. Through the window, I could see him sitting in his chair, a glass of whiskey in hand, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. "Dad," I called through the door. "Please, just talk to me." The porch light switched off. My only answer. I tried reaching out to longtime family friends, but word had spread quickly. Most avoided my calls or made excuses to end conversations abruptly. Michael had apparently been busy sharing his version of events, painting me as a desperate gambling addict who had betrayed the family business. Within a week, my reputation in Portland was destroyed. Former clients avoided me on the street. The bank froze my accounts, pending potential legal action. Even our family friends of 30 years crossed to the other side of the street rather than greet me. Only Rachel remained steadfast. "We need to leave," she said after I received a formal letter from Bradford outlining potential criminal charges if I did not accept their settlement offer. "There is nothing for you here anymore, John. We can start fresh somewhere else." "But that means Michael wins," I argued. "It means letting him get away with stealing and framing me." "Sometimes surviving is the best revenge," Rachel said, taking my hands in hers. "Build something new, something better. Show them what they lost when they threw you away." 2 weeks after being accused, with my name tarnished and my future in Portland destroyed, I packed everything I owned into Rachel's car. As we prepared to leave the city where I had spent my entire life, I took one last drive past the Roberts construction office building. Michael was outside, laughing with a client, wearing a suit that probably cost more than what most of our employees made in a month. He spotted my car and had the audacity to smile and wave, as if he had not just destroyed my life. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. This was not over. Someday, somehow, the truth would come out, and when it did, I would be ready. Rachel and I headed east, toward a new life and an uncertain future, with nothing but each other and a determination to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. Starting over at 32 is not something I had ever planned for. Rachel and I settled in Denver, Colorado, a city far enough from Portland that my ruined reputation would not follow me, but with a strong construction industry where my skills might be valuable. Our first months were brutally difficult. The small amount of savings I had managed to transfer before my accounts were frozen covered only 2 months of rent for a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that made Rachel nervous to walk alone. I applied for positions at every construction and project management company in the city. But without references, I received rejection after rejection. They called Portland, one hiring manager finally admitted after I pressed for feedback. The information they received was concerning. It seemed Michael and my father had not been content to merely drive me from home. They were actively sabotaging any attempt I made to rebuild. When I tried using a former colleague as a reference, I discovered he had been warned not to vouch for me under threat of termination. "I am sorry, John," he texted. "I have a family to support. I cannot risk my job." The psychological toll was perhaps worse than the financial one. I had always defined myself through my work and my place in the family business. Now, both were gone. Night after night, I woke from nightmares where I was trying to explain myself to my father, but no sound would come out of my mouth. Rachel took on extra architectural freelance projects to keep us afloat, while I worked a series of construction labor jobs, often for cash under the table. The physical exhaustion of framing houses and pouring concrete from dawn until dusk at least helped me sleep at night. "You are not this job," Rachel would say, massaging my aching shoulders after 14-hour workdays. "This is temporary. We will find a way forward." 3 months into our new life, I hit rock bottom. After a particularly grueling day on a job site where the foreman had berated me for working too slowly, I found myself sitting on the floor of our shower, hot water running over me, sobbing uncontrollably. Rachel found me there and simply sat down beside me, fully clothed, holding me until the water ran cold. "I cannot do this anymore," I admitted. "Everything I built, Everything I was is gone. No, she said firmly. They took your job and your family name. They did not take your knowledge, your experience, or your integrity. And they certainly did not take us. That night, after I had pulled myself together, Rachel spread a large sheet of paper across our small kitchen table. Time for a new plan, she announced. If no one will hire you because of your past, we stop trying to be employees. We become the employers. With what money? I asked. We can barely make rent. We start small, she insisted. I have clients who trust me. You have knowledge that most contractors lack. We combine forces. The idea was simple but brilliant. Rachel had architect contacts who regularly complained about contractors who did not understand architectural vision or proper project management. Meanwhile, I had over a decade of experience managing complex construction projects and relationships with subcontractors. We decided to start a construction consulting firm. With Rachel's design clients as our initial base, we would offer project oversight services, essentially acting as the owner's representative to ensure contractors delivered what architects designed, on time, and on budget. Thompson Building Consultants launched with a $500 website Rachel designed herself and business cards printed at the local copy shop. Our first client was a former colleague of Rachel's who was having problems with a residential renovation. The contractor was 3 months behind schedule and requesting substantial additional payments. I reviewed the contracts, visited the site, and identified numerous issues with the contractor's performance and billing practices. By negotiating firmly but fairly with the contractor, I saved the client over $20,000 and got the project back on track. Word spread quickly. Within 6 months, we had enough consulting work to rent a small office space. By the 1-year mark, we had hired 2 employees and expanded our services to include full project management for commercial renovations. The transformation was not just professional. Working through the betrayal and rebuilding my life forced me to develop in ways I never would have otherwise. I learned to trust my own judgment rather than seeking approval from my father. I discovered I could be resilient in the face of devastating loss. Most importantly, I learned that my worth was not tied to my family name or position. Rachel and I married in a small ceremony at a mountain overlook outside Denver, with only a handful of new friends in attendance. No family, no connections to my past life. As painful as that was, it also felt like a clean break, a chance to define ourselves on our own terms. To new beginnings, Rachel toasted at our modest reception. And to the strongest man I know. By year 3, Thompson Building Consultants had grown into a respected firm with 15 employees and a portfolio of successful projects across Colorado. We specialized in complex renovations and historically significant buildings, developing a reputation for bringing troubled projects back from the brink. I occasionally searched for news about Roberts Construction online, watching from afar as the company continued operations. They had completed the Riverside Plaza project, though reviews suggested quality issues had emerged after completion. New projects seemed smaller in scale than during my tenure, indicating possible financial constraints. In our 4th year in Denver, an opportunity arose that would prove transformative. The historic Chamberlain Hotel, a landmark building downtown, was midway through a $40 million renovation when the contractor abruptly filed for bankruptcy. The owner, Alexander Kingston, a prominent local developer, was desperate for someone to take over the failing project. "Everyone says you are the miracle worker for distressed projects," Kingston said during our first meeting. "I need a miracle right now, or I lose everything." Taking on the Chamberlain would mean expanding our business model from consulting to actual contracting, a massive leap that carried significant risk. But the high-profile nature of the project would either establish us as a major player in Denver or break us entirely. After careful consideration and extensive due diligence, we decided to take the chance. I hired several key personnel from the bankrupt contractor, negotiated favorable terms with subcontractors who were eager to keep working, and implemented the systems and procedures I had developed at Roberts Construction, but with improvements born from hard experience. The Chamberlain project became my obsession. I was first on site every morning and last to leave at night. Every detail, every schedule item, every dollar spent was tracked with meticulous precision. The management systems I created for the project would later become our company's proprietary methodology. 6 months ahead of the revised schedule and $2 million under the emergency budget, we completed the Chamberlain Hotel renovation. The grand reopening was covered by local media, with my company prominently featured as the team that salvaged the troubled project. "You have a gift," Kingston told me at the opening gala. "Not just for construction, but for leadership. People want to deliver their best work for you." The Chamberlain success catapulted Thompson Building Consultants into a new league. We moved to larger offices, expanded to 35 employees, and began receiving calls from developers across the western states. Within 5 years of being thrown out of my family business, I had built something arguably more impressive on my own terms. Rachel and I purchased a beautiful home in the foothills outside Denver, finally enjoying the stability and comfort we had sacrificed during those early struggling years. We were discussing starting a family, something I had previously been too consumed with work to consider. Life was good, better than I could have imagined during those dark days after leaving Portland. The pain of betrayal had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something less consuming, more like a scar than an open wound. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed again. I was reviewing project reports in my office when my assistant knocked on the door. "There is someone here to see you," she said, looking uncomfortable. "He does not have an appointment, but he says he is your brother." I sat frozen at my desk, a flood of emotions churning through me. 5 years had passed without a single word from my family. And now, Michael was standing in my office lobby. Part of me wanted to have security escort him out immediately. Another part desperately wanted answers. "Send him in," I finally said. The man who walked through my door barely resembled the confident, well-dressed brother I remembered. Michael looked at least 10 years older, with deep lines etched around his eyes and mouth. His expensive suit hung loosely on a frame that had lost significant weight, and his once meticulously styled hair was thinning and carelessly combed. "John," he said, his voice hoarse, "you look successful." "What are you doing here, Michael?" I asked, not offering him a seat. "How did you even find me?" He gave a hollow laugh. "You are not exactly hiding. The Chamberlain Hotel renovation made industry publications. Your company website has your picture on it." I remained standing, arms crossed. "Again, why are you here? After 5 years of silence, after what you did to me, you cannot possibly expect a warm welcome." Michael ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. "I would not be here if I had any other choice. Dad is sick. John, heart attack 3 months ago, followed by complications. He is stable now, but the doctors say another episode could kill him." Despite everything, I felt a pang of concern. "I am sorry to hear that, but I fail to see what this has to do with me." "The company is failing," Michael said bluntly. "After the Riverside project, things started going downhill. Quality issues led to expensive warranty work. We lost several major clients. The recession hit commercial construction hard in Portland." "Again, not my problem," I replied, though I felt no satisfaction in hearing about the struggles of the company I had helped build. Michael finally dropped the pretense. "We are on the verge of bankruptcy, John. 3 months behind on supplier payments. Payroll is a weekly struggle. And we have defaulted on the loan for the new office building. Dad insisted on buying at the market peak. So you ran the family business into the ground," I observed coldly. "That hardly surprises me. Your financial management skills were always creative at best." He flinched at the barb, but pressed on. "There is more. We bid on the Waterfront Commons project last year, a $60 million development that would save the company. We won the contract, but we are now 6 weeks behind schedule and bleeding money. The client is threatening to invoke penalty clauses that would bankrupt us instantly." I walked to the window, looking out at the Denver skyline while processing this information. Part of me felt vindicated hearing about the company's decline without my leadership. Another part mourned for the legacy my parents had built, now apparently on the brink of destruction. "Why come to me?" I asked finally. Surely there are consultants in Portland who could help restructure the business. Michael hesitated, then spoke in a rush. Because no one knows Robert's construction like you do. Because despite everything, I know you still care about Dad's legacy. Because I owe you the truth. I turned sharply. The truth? Now you want to tell the truth? I took the money, Michael admitted, eyes downcast. I was gambling online, got in deep with some people you do not want to owe money to. When I saw you investigating the missing funds, I panicked, though I had known this all along. Hearing the confession sent a surge of anger through me so intense I had to grip the edge of my desk to steady myself. You destroyed my life, I said quietly, dangerously. You stole from our family business, framed me, turned our father against me, and drove me out of the city I had lived in my entire life. And now you show up asking for help? I know I do not deserve it, Michael said. And for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his expression. What I did was unforgivable. I have lived with it every day for 5 years. Not well enough to come clean to Dad, apparently, I noted. Michael looked away. I tried, once. About 2 years ago. He shut me down. Said he did not want to hear anything negative about you. That the past was the past. That surprised me. He refused to discuss it? After you left. He changed, Michael explained. Threw himself into work, stopped talking about family entirely. The few times I mentioned your name, he would either change the subject or leave the room. I think the pain was too much for him. I paced the office, trying to process everything. So what exactly are you asking from me? Come back to Portland, Michael said. Help us salvage the waterfront project. Save the company. If not for me, then for Dad and the 40 families that depend on Robert's construction for their livelihoods. And in return, I asked, I will tell Dad everything. Michael promised. The theft, the framing, all of it. I will face whatever consequences come. I laughed bitterly. 5 years too late, Michael. My life is here now. I have my own company, my own reputation to protect. Why would I risk that to save the people who threw me away? Because despite everything, you are still John Thompson, Michael said quietly. The person who always fixed problems, who always put family first. And because Dad may not have much time left, that last part hit harder than I wanted to admit. The thought of never reconciling with my father, of him dying, believing I had betrayed him, was almost unbearable. I need to discuss this with my wife, I said finally. This affects her too, Michael nodded, handing me a business card. My cell number is on the back. The company landline might not be working much longer. After he left, I called Rachel and asked her to come to the office. When she arrived and I explained the situation, her initial reaction was protective anger. After what they did to you, they deserve whatever happens to them, she said fiercely. Why should you lift a finger to help? I am not considering it for Michael, I clarified. But there are innocent employees involved. And my father, Rachel softened slightly. You never got closure with him. I understand that. But John, going back means reopening wounds that have barely healed. It means putting yourself back into a toxic environment. Maybe, I acknowledged. Or maybe it is a chance to finally set things right, on my terms. We talked for hours, weighing every angle. The professional risk to our company if I divided my attention. The emotional toll of confronting the past. The logistics of operating in 2 cities simultaneously. By evening, we had reached a tentative decision. I called Michael from my office the next morning. I will come to Portland, I said without preamble. But I have conditions. Anything, he replied instantly. First, you tell Dad the complete truth before I arrive. I will not walk into another ambush. Of course, Michael agreed. I should have done it years ago. Second, I retain complete control over the waterfront project. No interference from you or anyone else. Understood. Third, I bring my own team from Denver. 2 project managers, a financial controller, and Rachel. I trust them, not your people. Michael hesitated only briefly. That is reasonable. Anything else? Yes, I said firmly. This is not forgiveness, Michael. This is not a reconciliation. This is a business arrangement. I will help save Robert's construction because I built it too. And because those employees and clients deserve better. But you and I? That relationship may be beyond repair. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I understand, Michael finally said. When can you come? I will fly out this weekend to assess the situation, I replied. If I decide the company can be saved, my team will follow next week. After hanging up, I sat in silence, processing the enormity of what I had just agreed to. After 5 years of exile, I was returning to Portland, to the company that had defined my life, and to the father who had disowned me. Rachel came into my office and put her arms around me. Are you sure about this? No, I admitted. But I need to do it anyway. Then we do it together, she said, squeezing my hand. Whatever happens, we face it together. As I began preparations for the trip, I could not shake the feeling that this return to Portland would either finally heal old wounds or reopen them beyond any hope of recovery. Either way, nothing would be the same afterward. The flight to Portland was the longest 3 hours of my life. Every mile closer brought a mixture of anxiety, anger, and a strange sense of homecoming I had not anticipated. Rachel held my hand throughout the journey, occasionally squeezing it when she sensed my tension rising. Remember, she whispered as we began our descent. You are not the same person who left. You are stronger now. You have nothing to prove to these people. Michael was waiting at the airport, looking even more haggard in daylight. The drive to the hospital was mostly silent, with only his occasional updates about our father's condition breaking the tension. The doctors say his heart is operating at about 40% capacity, Michael explained. He can still recover some function with medication and lifestyle changes. But another major event would likely be fatal. Has he agreed to see me? I asked, staring out the window at the familiar Portland streets. Yes, Michael confirmed. I told him everything yesterday. Everything. He did not take it well. I imagine not, I replied, feeling no sympathy for my brother's discomfort. Did he believe you? Eventually. I showed him the original bank statements, explained how I doctored them. I still had the notebook I planted in your desk. Michael gripped the steering wheel tightly. He has barely spoken since. Portland Providence Medical Center loomed ahead, a massive complex where I had been born 32 years earlier. Now I was returning to possibly say goodbye to my father, or perhaps to finally clear my name. I was not sure which scenario terrified me more. Robert Thompson looked like a diminished version of the powerful man who had dominated my life. Propped up in the hospital bed, skin ashen and hair completely white. He seemed to have aged 20 years in 5. Various monitors beeped softly around him, tracking the damaged heart that had finally forced a reckoning in our family. His eyes, however, were the same piercing blue that had always seen through excuses and half-truths. Those eyes fixed on me the moment I entered the room, and in them I saw recognition, regret, and something else I had rarely witnessed from my father: shame. John, he said, his voice weaker but still carrying the authority I remembered. You came. I did, I replied, remaining near the doorway, uncertain how to proceed. Michael told me what he did, Dad continued, gesturing weakly toward a chair beside the bed. Please, sit. If you can bear to be that close to me. I moved forward slowly and took the seat, Rachel standing supportively behind me, her hand on my shoulder. I should have known, Dad said after a moment of heavy silence. I should have known you would never steal from the company. From me. All those years of loyalty, of sacrifice. His voice broke, and he looked away. I failed you. As a father, the apology I had imagined, dreamed about, and sometimes cursed during countless sleepless nights was finally happening. And I found myself unprepared for the complicated emotions it triggered. Why did you believe him so easily? I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. 30 years of knowing me, versus a few fabricated documents. Dad closed his eyes briefly. Because it was easier than believing I had failed with Michael. I had already lost your mother. The thought that I had raised a son who would steal. He shook his head. I chose the narrative that hurt less. The one where my youngest was still salvageable. Still the person Sarah and I had raised him to be. It was brutally honest, and while it did not erase the pain, it at least made a certain kind of sense. Michael says the company is in trouble, I said, changing the subject to something less emotionally fraught. Dad gave a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. Trouble is an understatement. Robert's construction is 6 weeks from complete collapse. The waterfront project is a disaster. Suppliers are refusing deliveries without upfront payment, and our reputation is in tatters. How did it happen so quickly? I asked. Genuinely curious. Not quickly at all, Dad corrected. A slow decline that started about 6 months after you left. Projects ran over budget. Quality issues emerged. Clients began going elsewhere. He looked at me directly. Turns out you were the heart of the operation, not me. I was just the face. The validation was less satisfying than I might have imagined years earlier. And now you want me to save it. I want to make things right, Dad replied. The company is secondary. If you tell me to let it die, I will. God knows I deserve it. After what I did to you. His acceptance of responsibility surprised me. The Robert Thompson I knew never admitted failure or apologized for decisions once made. The employees do not deserve to lose their livelihoods because of our family drama, I said finally. And I helped build Robert's construction as much as anyone. I would not like to see it disappear. Hope flickered in my father's tired eyes. Does that mean you will help? I need to see the books, the project sites, talk to the management team, I hedged. I cannot commit to anything until I understand exactly what we are dealing with. Dad nodded. Of course, Michael will give you complete access to everything. He hesitated, then added, whatever you decide, I want you to know, I am prouder of what you have built in Denver than you can imagine. I have followed your progress from afar. The Chamberlain Hotel renovation was masterful work. The knowledge that he had been watching my career from a distance caught me off guard. You kept tabs on me? Every article, every project announcement, he confirmed. I told myself it was to make sure you were not causing trouble for other builders. But the truth. Island. He paused, emotion overtaking him briefly. The truth is, I missed my son. Rachel squeezed my shoulder gently, a reminder of her presence and support. After a moment, I stood. I should go review the company situation. You need to rest. Dad reached out, catching my hand in a surprisingly strong grip. John, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but please know that not a day has gone by that I have not regretted what happened, what I allowed to happen. I looked down at his hand, weathered and veined, the hand that had taught me to hammer my first nail and had later pointed to the door as I was exiled from the family. I need time, was all I could offer. This is not something we can fix in a day. He released my hand and nodded. Time is something I may not have much of anymore, but whatever you can give, I will take gratefully. The Roberts construction offices were a shadow of what I remembered. Empty desks dotted the main floor, evidence of layoffs or departures. The once bustling reception area was quiet, with an air of defeated resignation hanging over the remaining employees. Jessica, the accounting clerk, who had unwittingly played a role in my downfall, gasped when she saw me. John? Is it really you? In the flesh, I confirmed. I understand you might have some books for me to review. Of course, right away, she stammered, leading me to a conference room where boxes of financial documents awaited. For the next 3 days, I immersed myself in the disaster that Robert's construction had become. The Waterfront Commons project was indeed a catastrophe, $18 million over budget already, with critical design flaws that had been discovered only after construction began. Supplier relationships had deteriorated to the point where everything required cash on delivery, creating impossible cash flow challenges. More concerning was the company culture that had developed. Fear and blame permeated every interaction. Employees were afraid to report problems, leading to issues festering until they became crises. Michael, it seemed, had created an environment where bearers of bad news were punished rather than rewarded for their honesty. On the fourth day, I called a meeting with the core management team, including Michael. Rachel sat beside me, having spent the previous days interviewing key personnel and assessing the human dynamics at play. I have completed my assessment. I began without preamble. The situation is dire, but not unsalvageable. I believe Robert's construction can be turned around, but it will require significant changes. Relief visibly washed over several faces around the table, including Michael's. Thank God, he breathed. What do we need to do? First, leadership changes, I stated firmly. Michael, you will step down from all operational roles effective immediately. His relief transformed instantly to shock. What? But I am the vice president. Who will run things? I will, I said calmly. For the next 6 months at minimum, I will assume control of all operations, finance, and client relationships. My team from Denver arrives tomorrow to take key positions. You cannot just come in and take over, Michael protested. Dad would never agree to this. Actually, I already have, came a voice from the doorway. My father stood there, looking frail but determined, supported by a nurse. John is right. We need new leadership. Michael looked betrayed. But Dad, I admitted my mistakes. I thought that meant you forgave me. Forgiveness does not mean freedom from consequences, Dad replied. You nearly destroyed this company once. I will not give you the opportunity to finish the job. The meeting continued with my father present as I outlined the restructuring plan I had developed. Key elements included a complete reorganization of project management, transparent financial reporting, and a renegotiation of the Waterfront Commons contract. Additionally, I continued, we will need a capital infusion of approximately $2 million to stabilize operations and regain supplier confidence. Where would that come from? Asked Bradley, the current CFO. Banks will not lend to us in our current state. I will provide the capital, I announced, causing murmurs around the table. In exchange for 51% ownership of Robert's construction, the room fell silent. Michael looked stricken, while my father nodded slowly. That seems fair, Dad said. More than fair, considering what we owe you. This is not about what you owe me, I clarified. This is a business decision. I believe in the potential of this company with proper leadership. I am investing based on that belief. The meeting concluded with a clear path forward. I would remain in Portland for 6 months, dividing my time between Robert's construction and my Denver operations, which Rachel would primarily oversee. My father would serve in an advisory capacity but relinquish operational control, and Michael would be relegated to a sales role with strict oversight and no financial authority. As everyone filed out, Michael lingered, waiting until we were alone. So this was your plan all along, he said bitterly. Come in as the savior and take everything. No, Michael. I corrected him. My plan was to build my own successful company in Denver and never look back. You brought me here because you failed. You have no one to blame but yourself for the position you now find yourself in. What about forgiveness? He asked. I came clean. I admitted everything. Forgiveness is a process, not an event, I replied. And it certainly does not mean erasing consequences. You stole from the company, framed me, and then ran the business into the ground through incompetence and fear-based management. Consider yourself lucky to still have a job at all. He left without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. My father, who had waited in the hallway, entered after Michael departed. You were harsh with him, he observed, lowering himself carefully into a chair. I was truthful, I countered. Something this family has been short on for far too long. Dad nodded slowly. Fair enough. For what it is worth, I think your plan is solid. Robert's construction needs the discipline and systems you always tried to implement. It is not Robert's construction anymore, I pointed out. Once the paperwork is signed, it will be Thompson Building Group, Portland Division. A flash of emotion crossed his face, too complex to interpret fully. Your name on the building, as it should have been years ago. As we sat there, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the conference room, I realized that this outcome, a company rebuilt in my image, my father acknowledging my value, my brother facing consequences for his actions, was everything I might have wanted in the immediate aftermath of my exile. Yet it felt hollow somehow. Victory over those who had wronged me was not the balm I had once imagined it would be. The real victory, I was beginning to understand, was in the strength and resilience I had developed during those 5 years of rebuilding my life. I am not doing this for revenge, I said finally. I hope you know that. I know, my father replied. You are doing it because it is the right thing to do. Because, despite everything we did to you, you still care about the legacy we built together. He paused, emotion making his voice rough. You are a better man than I ever was, John. And I could not be prouder. As we began the long process of rebuilding not just a company, but a family, I understood that the most important thing I had gained through this ordeal was not success or vindication, but perspective. Some wounds would never fully heal. Some trust could never be completely restored. But moving forward no longer required forgetting the past. It just meant not being imprisoned by it. 6 months passed in a blur of 14-hour days. Difficult conversations and painstaking rebuilding. The Thompson Building Group, Portland Division, formerly Roberts Construction, emerged from near bankruptcy to stable operation through a combination of aggressive restructuring and my hands-on leadership. The Waterfront Commons project, once a disaster threatening to sink the company, was now back on schedule and under revised budget. I had personally renegotiated with the client, leveraging my reputation from Denver to restore confidence and adjust unrealistic timelines. Our supplier relationships were largely repaired through a combination of partial payments, transparent communication, and my personal guarantees. Employees who had been demoralized and fearful began to exhibit the pride and ownership I remembered from earlier days. My father, though still physically weakened from his heart attack, had made a remarkable recovery. The doctors attributed much of his improvement to reduced stress and a renewed sense of purpose as he worked alongside me in an advisory role. Our relationship, while not fully healed, had reached a place of mutual respect and cautious rebuilding. Michael presented a more complicated situation. Initially resentful of his diminished role, he had gone through periods of rebellion and resignation before finally beginning to demonstrate genuine change. Under my strict supervision and mentoring, he was slowly learning proper business ethics and professional responsibility. I never really knew how to run a business, he admitted during one of our weekly review sessions. Dad handed me authority without the skills to use it properly. It was easier to fake it than admit I was drowning. The difference between us, I observed, is that I asked for help and worked to learn what I did not know. You chose shortcuts and deception. I know, he acknowledged. I have had a lot of time to think about why I did what I did to you. Jealousy was part of it. You were always the golden sun in my eyes. Even if you did not feel that way, it was the closest we had come to discussing the betrayal directly, and while it did not erase the past, it represented progress I had not expected. Rachel divided her time between Denver and Portland, overseeing our original company, while providing crucial support for the Portland turnaround. Our relationship had only strengthened through this challenging period, proving again that I had married not just the love of my life but a true partner in every sense. The real turning point came when Rachel announced she was pregnant with our first child. The news transformed my perspective on the entire situation with my family. Suddenly, the past seemed less important than the future I wanted to create for my child. During a quiet dinner with my father at his home, I shared the news of his impending grandfather status. A grandchild, he said, eyes filling with tears. I never thought I would live to see this. Well, you better plan on sticking around, I told him. This kid is going to need a grandfather to spoil them and teach them inappropriate construction site language when their parents are not looking. He laughed, then grew serious. Do you think? Would you allow me to be part of your child's life? After everything? The question hung in the air between us, laden with the weight of our complicated history. Dad, I said carefully. What happened between us was terrible. The trust that was broken cannot be fully repaired. But holding on to anger and resentment would only poison my child's life. And mine. So yes, you will be their grandfather in every sense of the word. He reached across the table and gripped my hand, too overcome to speak. That evening marked a shift in our healing process. Not forgiveness exactly. I had come to understand that true forgiveness was not a single act, but an ongoing choice, but something closer to acceptance. Accepting the flawed reality of my family, while choosing not to be defined by its worst moments. As the Portland division stabilized, I began implementing the final phase of my plan. During a board meeting that included my father, Michael, Rachel, and key executives from both companies, I presented the completed restructuring. Thompson Building Group will now operate as a single entity with 2 divisions, I explained, showing the new organizational chart. The Denver division will continue to focus on consulting and project rescue, while Portland will handle traditional construction with a specialty in complex commercial projects. And leadership? My father asked. Though he likely already knew the answer. I will serve as CEO of the combined company, I confirmed. Rachel will be Chief Operating Officer, overseeing both divisions. And, I paused, looking directly at Michael. Michael will become Vice President of Client Relations for the Portland division, provided he completes the Business Ethics Certification program and maintains clean performance reviews for the next year. Michael's head snapped up in surprise. Vice President? After everything? Everyone deserves a second chance, I said, not handed to them, but earned through demonstrated change. You have shown improvement over these 6 months. This is an opportunity to continue that growth. And what about me? My father asked quietly. You will serve as Chairman Emeritus, I told him, a position that honors your founding role while acknowledging the transition to new leadership. You will still have a voice, but no operational authority. He nodded, appearing satisfied with the arrangement. It seems you have thought of everything. One more thing, I added. 5% of company profits will be directed to a new foundation in Mother's name, providing scholarships for children who have lost parents. The Sarah Thompson Memorial Foundation had been Rachel's idea, a way to honor my mother's memory while creating something positive from our family troubles. She would have loved that, Dad said softly. Later that day, as Rachel and I walked along the Portland waterfront, I reflected on the incredible journey of the past 5.5 years. When Michael framed me, I thought my life was over, I admitted. Everything I had worked for was gone in an instant. Now, I own a larger company than I ever would have if things had gone according to the original plan. Rachel squeezed my hand. Life rarely follows our plans. Sometimes the detours, painful as they are, lead to better destinations. I still have moments of anger, I confessed. Days when I look at Michael and remember what he did. How easily Dad believed the worst of me. That is normal, she assured me. Healing is not linear. You are allowed to still feel hurt by what happened. The difference now is that the anger does not control me. I realized. It is just one emotion among many. Not the driving force in my life anymore. As our company continued to grow and prosper, as my father regained his health, as Michael slowly earned back limited trust, and as Rachel and I prepared for parenthood, I came to understand the most profound lesson of my journey. True strength is not found in revenge or even in success. It lies in the ability to rebuild after devastation, to create something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal, and to choose a future not defined by past wounds. The final piece of my personal healing came the day our daughter was born. Holding that tiny, perfect being in my arms, I made a silent promise that the cycles of dysfunction in our family would end with her. She would grow up in a home built on honesty, accountability, and unconditional love. Something neither Michael nor I had fully experienced. When my father and Michael came to the hospital to meet the newest Thompson, I saw genuine joy and hope in their eyes. In that moment, watching them marvel at my daughter, I realized that the most unexpected outcome of this entire ordeal was not the successful business I had built or the vindication I had achieved, but the possibility of a healed family moving forward together. Eyes open to the past, but focused on the future. The man who had been thrown out of his family with nothing had not just survived, he had thrived, building something stronger and more authentic than what had been lost. And in doing so, he had created the space for something that once seemed impossible: genuine healing and growth for everyone involved. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their darkest moment does not define their future. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the greatest victory is not defeating others, but becoming the person you were meant to be despite the obstacles placed in your path.